Good afternoon. It is 6:06 on Tuesday, April 9th. This is the Instruction Committee meeting, and I would like to call it to order.
Madam Chairman, or Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion to approve the agenda as consented.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. We have a little guy in the audience that happens to be mine. Leo, can you say hi? He's a little grumpy this afternoon, so we're working through that. Hashtag mom problems. So we have new business, and I would like to turn it over to Dr. Hummer.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. I appreciate that. So we have a couple items for you all this evening. Two of them we're recommending go to the full board for approval, which I'll get to those in a second. The first is we wanted to share with you all 2 lab school opportunities. These lab school opportunities are additional funding that we receive through VDOE that provides additional opportunities for our students. So we're going to be sharing some information in regards to what that's going to look like, and then answering any questions that you might have. Take a little pause there. We're also going to discuss an update on the Virginia Literacy Act. We are full swing with implementation starting next school year, and we just want to provide you all with an update of where we are, as well as answering any questions that you might have with the next steps with that act and the implementation. We also have some information we want to share with you all with artificial intelligence that is here, and we wanted to discuss with you of what we are dealing with in regards to artificial intelligence. And right now, one of the things that we are going to be looking at doing is moving forward with a potential regulation and policy on how we will merge our instructional practices with artificial intelligence and embracing that. So we wanted to discuss where we currently are with that, and then the next steps, and answer any questions that you might have. The other piece is I was getting some questions from some board members in regards to graduation requirements, and I think it's really pertinent for us to talk through that. Like, what are those requirements for our students when they get to high school, and in regards to accessing a standard, advanced, or an applied studies diploma? So we're going to talk through that. A lot of those requirements, I'm sure, as you know, is through VDOE in regards to giving our students those diplomas when they graduate. So we want to talk through that so you guys are aware of those pieces. The last 2 items are going to be 2 items that need to go to the full board for approval. The first is our Perkins plan. Those are additional dollars that we receive for our students accessing our CTE programs. And then we also have our annual plan, which is for additional dollars we receive for students receiving additional special education services and additional dollars there. So those are the 2 items that are going to the full board. The others are for information only. And with that, I will now hand it off to Dr. Angelo. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hummer. Members of the committee, I will invite Dr. Myers up to address our first topic, which is the Data Science Lab School.
Members of the committee, Dr. Hummer, thank you for allowing us to share with you this evening about the Data Science Lab School. And I have Dr. Crawford here with me, our math supervisor at the secondary level, and also Mr. Ben Thompson, who, as you know, is the principal of Dow J. Howard. So VDOE has teamed up with universities in the state, along with school divisions, to provide opportunities for our students to go more deeply in certain areas. This particular partnership is between George Mason and our division on a data science lab school. We have applied for the grant. We don't know if we'll get it. We are going to have to wait, of course, until all the budget process plays out at the state level. Originally, we thought we would know sometime this month. It's probably going to be May at this point. But we have applied for a $3 to $5 million grant over 3 to 5 years. And we have slotted Dow J. Howard, and Ben can talk to you more about that. in as far as where it'll be housed and all the things that are required in order to make that happen there. Dr. Crawford has been instrumental in creating this opportunity for our students, and it will just be for our students. It's going to be an amazing opportunity. Next year would be a planning time. Where we get the facility up and running, we recruit students, we inform parents. Those are the things that next year would involve. And so I'm going to turn it over right now, and I just have to put a plug in for Dr. Crawford. She helped write this curriculum for the state. And so the state reached out to our division to say, we'd like for you to team with George Mason. And so fingers crossed it works out, that we're going to be the ones awarded this opportunity, but a huge thanks goes to Dr. Crawford because she's worked very hard to create this, so hopefully it'll work out.
Honored board members and Dr. Hummer, thank you for hearing about this opportunity for our students to create a data science and computing applications lab school pathway. In Frederick County, we are excited to offer this to our students if funded, and having it at Dow J. Howard is the perfect space because students from all three of our high schools can then attend the data science lab school. And so when you think about this lab school, what makes this different than the base school for our students? A couple of things. Number one, they can take second courses in a concentration in data science, computer science, and science, all bearing college credit. So 2 data science courses rather than 1, 2 computer science courses rather than 1 at the college level, and 2 additional science courses that are college, have college credit with them at no cost to our students. Number 2, students will have the opportunity to do one of 3 things, but they can stack these if they're really excited about data science. They can earn a data analytics certificate credential, which in the workforce without college starts at $60,000 per year, and that ranges $60,000 to $106,000. Now, with a college degree added to that in data science, you're looking at starting salaries of $112,000. So you're talking about a workforce opportunity for kids right out of high school, and so imagine that they could work, earn good money while attending college at the same time, and that could help fund that. Or students could go right into the workforce if they so choose. So that credential is part of this, and they will be working in a state-of-the-art data hub with the latest in computer software and industry-based software that's used in industry. So the last thing I wanted to say is that students can also have work-based learning internships if they so choose, and all of our students will be doing college-level research with the partnering university professors in the area of data science and computing applications. And as you know, data science and computer science underlie AI, and that's driving this. But also think about this fact: in the past 2 years, more than 90% of the data ever created in the world was created in the past 2 years, and 80 to 90% of those data are unstructured. So we need kids to learn new data analysis methods for being able to analyze the data. So we're excited about this opportunity for our students at Dow J, but it is an opportunity for all of our students if funded. Ben, you want to tell us about that data science hub and what that's going to look like at Dow J?
Absolutely. So about a month ago or so, I was approached, as well as the other 3 high school principals, about this opportunity. And one of the things that we talked through was, where does it fit best? And so logistically, Dow J, it fits best. We can offer it to all students and at all the high schools. We have a little bit of space left. This will be their last classic open classroom now at Dow J. Howard, and it'll be pretty full before we have to start getting really creative with spaces for learning experiences. So a couple of things, it checked all the boxes for me. It's an expansion or an additional program, another pathway for kids. There's no local dollars associated with this because it's a grant if funded. The other thing is it starts to get at some of the issues that we have in terms of our aging infrastructure at Dow J. To this day, there is still a section of a building within Frederick County that does not have air conditioning, and that is, there's all of our labs at Dow J, external labs, are not air conditioned. So we have heat in the winter, but in those August months when we're just coming back, it can be very, very hot in those labs, and then early or in the early summer, right before we get out. And so this grant offers the opportunity for any impact that we have on other areas to have some renovations done. And so where that is very helpful is there are some areas where we can open up classrooms by moving those classrooms into the lab. And so there's the impact that the lab school will have on Dow J, and therefore allow us to do some renovations in terms of HVAC and to open up those classrooms that the data science program will need. Fingers crossed, we won't need the third part, which talks about a modular classroom space. I'm very hopeful that we won't need that, but if we get to that point, I think I've got some creative ideas that I'll talk with the team, and I've been talking with facilities about that maybe won't be a modular in the classic sense. So essentially renovating the electricity lab into a data hub, state-of-the-art data hub and that'll really be the heart and soul of the program. And then from beyond that, there'll be 3 classroom spaces. Total program enrollment will be about 100 students. And again, it's just, again, expansion, offering another pathway for kids, letting kids to get at what their passion is. So very excited about the opportunity. Questions about?
Questions for us?
A couple. Madam Chair. So I'm excited to hear about this, especially being Northern Virginia. We are kind of the home of data centers. I know it's not the same thing, but it is exciting to see that students will actually can go in there, grab a certificate, and get a job right out of high school where they're not, succumbing to student debt or anything like that. So I'm excited about that. A couple things with the renovation dollars. I like to hear that we can kind of wrap stuff up with it. With those renovation dollars, where we'd be turning the electrical classroom into the data center lab. I understand it's going to take care of an HVAC issue over there, but exactly how much of a renovation would that be? Is it fully funded by the grant? And if not, how much would we be putting in as a school system?
100% fully funded by the grant. What we're looking at is potentially, and this is just conversations that would probably be better asked from facilities, but I'll share with you what my conversations have been with them, is essentially package units in the lab spaces that we'll have to that we're going to have to be moving classrooms to. So it's 2, possibly 3 spaces there. And essentially what will happen is they'll go to a package unit, then we'll renovate the electricity classroom or lab into a classroom space for the data hub. And then there'll be a very modest renovation of the bathroom and classroom that already exists there. And really that's just opening up a little bit, adding it into what would be closer to, well, not closer to code today, because it's very, very small.
And what would happen to the electricity lab?
So electricity lab would turn into data hub. We haven't been able to have an electricity program for years, unfortunately, at Dow J. Howard. Just for staffing, it is tremendously hard. It's
I'm talking about that.
Yeah,
with you.
in all full disclosure, it's very difficult for us to hire for any of the skilled trades, because what you get into is that competing area where we're trying to compete with industry in terms of, and then hopefully folks that want to teach or that's their passion. And it's really, really hard. And electricity is particularly difficult because it's something that is very high paid. And so then, having to get someone in that is willing to do that. Sometimes you'll be able to find, and just my experience of being there for a while, someone that is like just retired, maybe wants to do it for 2 to 3 years or something, but then they're not building that part of that culture of the building. So that's difficult as well.
So the grant, it's fully funds what we're talking about here. If we are awarded the grant, we will have starter money, through the grant that says for this next year, part of the main part of next year, as I shared, is going to be getting this lab up and running.
Yep. Yeah. I
But
appreciate that.
there are no local dollars.
And I appreciate, that we're not just trying to rush into it. We're actually, if we get this, we're, going to take 2 years. We got to iron everything out, get it down logistically so we don't have any hiccups or whatever, or minimize the ones that we do have. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for us? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Good evening. So I am going to talk about an elementary lab school opportunity that we have for creating elementary teachers, not for elementary students. So you may remember in one of your personnel committee meetings, you had information about a lab school partnership that we have with JMU for current instructional assistants who are going through the program and for some recent Frederick County graduates. And so folks who are currently working for us or some students who had recently graduated could apply for this program and get in. They could work toward a degree in early childhood, elementary education, inclusive early childhood or special education. And it's kind of a grow your own. And so then we work with the folks who are employed with us to help them with getting their practicum experience, doing their student teaching, and they don't have to leave their job in order to work on their degree. So that's a current program that we have underway already. And my understanding is we have 5 who are ready to graduate this spring and summer. So hopefully we will be able to benefit from that because we basically get first dibs on those folks when they graduate from either JMU or ODU as part of those programs. The new opportunity that we have is part of a James Madison University Lab School, and that opportunity is going to involve students who are in high school with us currently in Frederick County. So students would enter high school and be doing their high school coursework. At some point, they would then combine and be doing high school coursework as well as coursework at Laurel Ridge Community College. They would graduate from high school, and then they would move on to JMU for 2 years, and then they would graduate with their degree in education, and they would come and teach for Frederick County Public Schools. So just to walk you through some of the details from the Laurel Ridge perspective, this is part of a lab school grant, and so between Laurel Ridge and JMU, they are working with other school divisions in the area in order to get this up and running. And so it's not going to start for us until the year 25-26, the school year 25-26, where we will have students who can actually enter into that program. For those students, as of right now, tuition and fees would be no cost to the student while they go through the program. They would be taking 15 to 16 credit hours a semester, up to 5 classes. Their materials wouldn't cost anything. So all of that would be done through Laurel Ridge while they are still in high school. And this next slide shows you a little bit of what their day would look like. So they would arrive at high school in the morning. They would then be bused to Laurel Ridge. They would attend their classes at Laurel Ridge. They would return to high school around lunchtime. They would have their afternoon classes at the high school, and then they could participate in any extracurricular activities. So they're not being completely removed from the high school setting, but they are getting the opportunity to earn those credits at Laurel Ridge while they are still in high school. In order to be eligible, they need to be a rising junior at one of our participating high schools. They need to have completed Algebra 2 by the end of 10th grade, although there is a caveat for students who might be taking that during the summer after their sophomore year before they enter as a junior, that Laurel Ridge is making an exception for that. They have to have earned 3 verified credits by the end of 10th grade, be in good academic standing, and in good disciplinary standing. And so if all of those things are in place, they can apply for one of the slots, and if they get selected, then they would be able to go into the program. So are there any questions about that opportunity with JMU and Laurel Ridge?
One quick question. If it's $0 to the student while they're in here, because I'm all about this and trying to get kids into the profession, but I also don't want to lose them to our competitors. And if we're going to pay for that and they decide, they graduate and then they jump on over to, let's say, Loudoun County, Fairfax, any of the other schools, is there anything saying that they'll reimburse the tuition that we've spent for them?
So the grant for the lab school is what would be paying that tuition.
Okay.
So Frederick County wouldn't be paying it, at least not in this first iteration
Right.
of the process. And so I believe we get first dibs or right of first refusal on students who are from Frederick County who go through the program. But if they would choose to go to another division, it's Virginia funded. So
Right.
they're going into Virginia public schools.
Okay. All right. Easy enough. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Did you want me to keep going? All right. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the Virginia Literacy Act. And we've updated you a couple of times previously this year, but tonight I wanted to be able to talk about the 4 things that you see on your screen there. So we will start with HQIM, or High Quality Instructional Materials. And this is something that if you are familiar at all with the Virginia Literacy Act, you will be seeing a lot about HQIM. And basically that is what we call the core program that we use in order to teach reading or literacy at the elementary level. Core does not mean Common Core. Core means the main program. That's our adopted program that we are using in order to get the materials and the resources and the lessons that we teach on a regular basis for literacy. So the idea is that what we teach matters. And if we have people who are using a bunch of different resources, not necessarily all sticking to the same thing, everybody's doing something different, then instruction gets scattered. And we don't want that to happen. And so that's why using a high quality instructional material as your core program is very important. And one of the requirements of the Virginia Literacy Act is that all school divisions in Virginia will adopt a high quality core instructional material program that is from a list that the state has provided. By doing so, we are making sure that all children are receiving rigorous, high-quality literacy instruction. We are making sure that it's evidence-based, and we're helping to reduce some of the workload on teachers because of the planning that's involved in finding resources and materials and things for teaching some of this content. We are lucky in Frederick County that we already have one of the programs on the approved list. So we don't have to go through an adoption process. There are a lot of school divisions right now who are scrambling. The list just came out late fall, early winter, sometime around late November or December. And so once we got that list, we had to determine whether or not we had a program or if we needed to adopt a program. So there are a lot of divisions currently in the process of trying to adopt a program, get materials here, and be ready to start in August. We don't have to do that. What we will have to do is focus on developing expectations, providing support, and monitoring the implementation of the use of this program, because while we adopted HMH, or Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's Into Reading program about 5 years ago, it was the school year 1920 when we first got the program. And in March of 2020, we completely shut down. And then we came back, and some students were here every other day. Some students were here every day. Some students were virtual. And so we had a couple of years of COVID crazy. And then we kind of got back into the swing of things. And since that has happened, our usage of the program has become a little bit scattered. So it's not quite where we need it to be from the perspective of a high quality instructional material that's being used consistently and in the same way in all classrooms. So we will be working to develop expectations so that teachers know exactly what is expected with the use of the program. We'll be providing support, so additional training and job-embedded coaching for teachers in the classrooms, and we'll be monitoring the implementation. And that's one of the things that's part of the Virginia Literacy Act as well, where it's expected that principals and school leaders and coaches are in classrooms and determining how the program is being used as part of instruction. So that's something that will be a little bit new to teachers, not that walkthroughs are new to teachers, but walkthroughs specific to a program implementation would be a little bit different. So those are things that will be coming as part of the Virginia Literacy Act. We also are waiting patiently for finalized lists from the State Department for supplemental and intervention materials. Supposedly, those lists are going to be out and ready by the end of April and will be approved, but there are also opportunities for people to continue to submit programs to those lists, and we're being told that it could be December before we have a finalized list. So what that means is that some of the decisions that we may be making related to things like intervention that students are receiving, if they're struggling with the literacy aspects that they're learning and they need an intervention, we need to identify materials or programs that they would be using in order to get that intervention. Those materials and programs have to be off of the state-approved list. If we need a supplement to the core program, so we have into reading, but if we need some additional support with writing or additional support with phonics, those programs that we would select to provide instruction from have to be on the state supplemental list. So getting those lists is very important, and then only using materials on those lists will be important because that's part of the act, and so we have to make sure we follow that. So once we have those lists, we'll be able to make some of those decisions, but in the meantime, we're waiting. Training for staff is another piece of the act that has to be completed. And so you can see there, we have different categories of staff who will be required to attend training. We know that for elementary and middle school principals and for any reading specialists that have not already been trained, including those in grades 6 through 8, because the training that already has occurred was only for K-5 reading specialists. So any reading specialists who have not already been trained will have training sometime this summer. They have not yet told us when that training is, just that it will happen this summer, so we are waiting to find that out. But that training will be in person. And then all teachers who have licensure in the areas that are listed on the screen will be required to participate in and complete training in evidence-based literacy practices. Some of our teachers have already completed a lot of training, and so we know that some of that training is going to count. We know that there is still training that has to happen. So you've heard about letters. There's a letters 1 and there's a letters 2. So far, many of our teachers have been taking letters 1. And so those who were able to complete letters 1 with an 80% mastery rate, or however they refer to it in letters, those teachers will qualify to take letters 2. And if they do that, then they'll meet the state requirement. There will also be modules that are online that the state is providing that will help meet that requirement. And then they're supposed to let us know what other training may help satisfy the requirement, but we don't have that list yet either. We're supposed to get that sometime in the summer or the fall in order to help teachers get through that training. So a lot of what we are doing is playing a waiting game, but also then trying to provide the structures and the processes so that we know that teachers are going to have things in place for them when this takes effect in August of this coming school year. So that is, I think, so I'm sorry. The plan that we have to submit to the state is the VDOE plan for literacy. That is due July 1st. There are specific elements that we have to include in that plan. We just got the final template for that last month, and so we've been going through that. Several of us are attending a training provided by the state in order to help us go through the completion of that plan, and so we're working on it. We also have our own division implementation plan that we've been working on for several years. And so every elementary school has a representation on that committee. Either the principal or assistant principal is on that committee. And then the reading specialists from the schools are on subcommittees that are part of that group that are working on different goals that we have, most of which feed into the requirements of the Virginia Literacy Act. So we are well prepared heading into next school year in order to meet the requirements of the act, but there are things that are going to be required for our teachers that are going to take a lot of time for our teachers at the elementary level. A lot of those trainings are like college courses, and so they are taking that on top of all of the work that they're doing on a regular basis. And so we just want you to be aware of things that are coming for our staff and the things that we're working on to help support them. So any questions about the Literacy Act?
Two things. One, I appreciate the plan in place and division implementation plan. I understand that, late April and December and kind of waiting on the state to do anything, but I'm glad that we're not standing still, we're moving in a direction, so kudos to you and your team. The next thing would be, if I didn't lose my train of thought here, letters. So I understand that, when we went back and I think we talked about this last year, not the year before, but last year after COVID and everything and how the wonders that was kind of working. I know that the plan was to get teachers through there. Is it, being that this is coming down the pipeline, we see it, we've already got team members already involved, would it possibly be worth looking at, instead of sending teachers away to go get this training, bring somebody here to teach it? That way everybody's here, we can knock it out in one big thing, or?
So we actually have 4 local facilitators,
Okay.
4 of our reading specialists that are doing the training for us, so that we don't have to send them to
Okay.
get training or have someone from the company come here to do the training. Because the training is set up the way that it is, it takes an entire year to complete the
Okay.
Letters 1 course, and then an entire year to complete Letters 2. So it involves 30-plus hours of time that they're reading and doing things online, and then they're coming together for 4 days of 6 hours together in order to do face-to-face learning over the course of that year's time, which is why we do have local facilitators that are leading our folks through that.
Yeah, totally not what I thought it was like. So, all right, easy enough.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, that's it for me.
All right. Any other questions?
No, just recognize that this is a lot of hard work, a lot of moving
By the
parts,
mom.
and people are going to
Daddy.
need some grace, as we go through this implementation. So, thank you.
We appreciate that. Yes,
I
sir.
do have a question. So far as the delivery model for the letters 1 and 2, how was that established?
The actual training itself was, the way it was created was by a company called Voyager Sopris, but it was based on research for the science behind reading instruction and effective base literacy practices. And they basically developed the course with professors and folks who wrote that course. And then the facilitators go away and get trained to be facilitators and then basically bring that course back. So it's not something that we are creating or that we are saying that this is how long it's supposed to take. It's the training that's kind of packaged in that way and developed in that way, and then we bring it here and provide it to our teachers. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much. Where does it originate from? Where's the company?
I'm not sure. Voyager Sopris was the original company. Lexia now they bought it, and so Lexia now has it. They're a nationwide company, so I'd have to look and see where it first came from. Boston was Voyager Sopris.
So they're an American company.
I believe so. The research is worldwide, so I don't know who necessarily owns the research.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
I would invite Dr. Zeiss up to talk about artificial intelligence.
Good evening. I'm Jody Zeiss. I'm the supervisor of instructional technology here. And we are going to look a little bit at AI. AI is something our division has been looking at, studying, learning about since last year. We did not want to enter into this lightly. AI itself has been around for a while. We have Siri and Alexa and Spotify it learns your likes and dislikes, but things really got hopping when we got generative AI, ChatGPT, last year. And we knew that we had to get on top of it, but we didn't just want to throw it in the laps of teachers. And so we've taken this year to responsibly research it, get professional learning on it. We've had an expert come in from the International Society of Technology Education. She's actually local and phenomenal. She also worked with the whole region over the summer. AI products, just like any instructional technology product we use with students and teachers, we go through a thorough process to check to make sure that it's compliant with federal, state, and local policies, procedures, data safety, data privacy, and that kind of thing. So AI would be no different. But what is important is that our teachers understand how to protect personally identifiable information in this way, because AI is a little bit different. But it's also important for us to teach our students how to really use it to move from being consumers to creators. It's not so much about cheating. That's the first thing that comes to so many people's minds, but why? Our students have so much potential and so much excitement behind this technology. And so this year, we've been taking the time to learn how to use it. Because of privacy policies and how they work, there's a 13 and under piece and there's an over 13 piece. And so what will be available to our high school students will look a little bit different than what is available to our elementary and to our middle school students. And all of this will be aligned with the guidelines that the governor has set forth. And then, as Dr. Hummer mentioned, the district is working on policy and procedure for this. And it's really important that we stay up on guidelines, because while we do have we will have the policies and the procedures, AI, just like all technology, is changing so fast, and guidelines are something that we can stay on top of and keep our teachers abreast of the latest strategies and ideas and things to look out for too. What questions do you have?
No, I'm good. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, we wanted to present this to you all because I'm sure you're probably going to be hearing a lot about this, and not necessarily as a local aspect, but this is nationwide in regards to where artificial intelligence is going and how it's helping organizations, and as Mrs. Ice mentioned, how it's going to be supporting our students and how they're learning and how our teachers are going to be accessing different resources and information. So also, as she mentioned, we definitely want to get ahead of this. So as we develop these policies and regulations, we definitely want to make sure that we're all aware of what we should be doing and not doing and how we're accessing this, because it's huge, it's big. But anyways, we're definitely, any questions that you guys have, please let us know. Regardless if we have a regulation or policy, it's here. You know, so it's one of the things that we want to make sure that we get ahead of, and that we are aligning our procedures with how we want our students and our staff accessing it. So thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, real quick. Yeah, and I know you kind of touched on this, and I think it's a great tool that we use every day. I use Alexa every day, and I order stuff off Amazon through Alexa. But my worry is kind of what you alluded to earlier, is that we're going to, take away, and we're going to get plagiarism in papers. We're going to take away a student's creativity by just telling them, hey, make me a happy rabbit. Oh, no, I need it happier. I need it, with a blue background. Instead of like going out and drawing it, we're asking the computer to do it. And, I don't want to get all tinfoil hat with it or anything. But I understand there is a lot of pitfalls, and it's something, like you said as well, that we're going to have to look at. And there's it's always going to be changing. It is a very fluid program. We just don't know exactly where our pitfalls are going to be yet.
We don't.
It's, I would like to see how teachers are going to be able to keep a monitor on, instead of plagiarism. Now we've got to worry about, because it's all going to look original. It's
Absolutely.
it might not give you the same thing twice. So mine, Ellen, and Scott's paper could all look a little bit different if we're, doing Aristotle's definition of tragedy and ask, for ChatGPT to put it out there, and none of them are going to match up to the real thing, right?
Absolutely. I think an important part of that instructionally is the way that we deliver instruction and ask students to create products and what those products are, instead of just being papers. It's going deeper with those, and the conversations with those being the assessments and really helping us learn. So it's a shift for us too, which is why we've taken that intentionality this year, and we're determined to keep the human piece of this as we go along. But it does have benefits because it allows us to really adjust to meet the needs of all students. We can tweak an assignment with just, one phrase. We can ask it to modify and adjust to really extend learning or to slow it down a little bit.
Exactly.
So there's pros and cons, but please feel free to ask us questions. We're learning along the way as well. Thank you.
So I'm back. I wanted to share with you about the graduation requirements. And so we have two different types of graduation diplomas. Standard diploma and advanced studies diploma. If a student's working towards a standard diploma, it's 22 credits required. And if it's an advanced studies diploma, it's 26. So what I've done here, looking for my clicker here. What I've shared with you here is breaking it down by content areas so that it's user-friendly. You will see if you look on our website under the Program of Studies, these graphics are also there so that if you'd like to read more about each class, that's on our Program of Studies, and the graphs you see here are there as well. So English is fairly straightforward. Students are required to take English every year when they're in high school. There are 2 SOL tests that taken in their junior year, reading and writing. And so you can see that out of those 22 and 26 credits, 4 credits come from English. Moving on to math. Students in working towards a standard diploma, it's 3 credits. If they're working towards an advanced studies diploma, it's 4 credits. Regardless, they take 1 SOL test, and that's typically Algebra 1, although it doesn't have to be. That is what typically students take. You'll notice as you look through this that students have opportunities if they say, okay, I'm going to start on a standard diploma, that's what I want to work towards. If things change and they want to work towards that advanced studies diploma, there are different entry points along the way. So they don't have to know that when they come into 9th grade, whether they're going to be forever on a standard diploma for the next 4 years, or if they're going to make changes on that. In math, the only real big difference there is that advanced studies diploma, students must take Algebra 2. If they're on a standard diploma, they can take something called algebra. I'm laughing here because it normally rolls right off of my tongue here. The AFTA course, Algebra Functions Data Analysis. It's a mouthful. And so students would take that instead of the Algebra 2. Otherwise, you'll see that they have opportunities to take any one of these courses regardless of what diploma they're working on. As far as history is concerned, again, that's pretty straightforward. World history 1 and 2, Virginia and U.S. history, and then all students are required to take government their senior year for both standard and advanced studies diploma. They take 1 SOL test when they're in high school, and typically that's World History 1, but again, it doesn't have to be. That's pretty much the norm, but not the requirement. Moving on to science, you'll see there are multiple pathways. This is somewhat like math, where you'll see lots of variations as far as course offerings for students. Some 9th graders come in and take environmental science, others come in and take biology, but you'll see they can do either one regardless of whether they're on standard or advanced studies diploma. If they're on a standard diploma, it's 3 credits, and if it's on advanced studies, it's 4 credits. And as I said, biology is typically the course they take their SOL test in. Health and physical education, 9th and 10th graders take health and physical education. They take driver's ed when they're in 10th grade typically, although those are things that we can work with individual students on if 10th grade is not the time that it works for them to do that. All students are required, if you look at the bottom of the light blue box, all students are required to have CPR and first aid training. That is part of Virginia Department of Ed's graduation requirements too. Juniors and seniors also may take health and PE courses like team sports. So they have that opportunity as juniors and seniors. They are electives, they're not required. The remaining requirements for one or the other diploma, all students are required to take economics and personal finance per Virginia Department of Education. Every student does that, typically their junior year. All students must have credits in fine arts, world languages, or CTE. It does not mean they have to do all three. It means they're going to choose between one of those areas. And then also, all students, regardless of their diploma, have to have 2 sequential electives, and I've provided examples there. So a lot of students get it through a CTE course, but it does not have to be through CTE. If they love art, it can be Art 1 and 2. There are music programs, they can do Jazz Band 1 and Jazz Band 2. So it really is any elective that builds one on the other. The big difference between standard and advanced studies diploma in regard to electives are the world languages. A student is required to take a world language if they are on an advanced studies diploma. They can either do 2 years of 2 different world languages, or they can do 3 years of one. So a student might do 3 years of Spanish, and that would meet that graduation requirement. Or they might do 2 years of Spanish and 2 years of French. So they have that option between the two. So that summarizes, if you were to go back up and count, you would get back up to 22 and 26 credits, depending upon which diploma students go towards. And again, there are different entry points, so it's not such that you sign on in 9th grade and you can never change. That's the great thing about it, is there's a lot of flexibility. And we spend a lot of time working with counselors and students, especially if they transfer into our division from another division, maximizing those opportunities for them. So this is an area that I spend a lot of time working with counselors and teachers and principals on to make sure that we are providing every opportunity for our students when it comes to graduation. Do you have questions about graduation requirements?
Madam Chair, if I may, Dr. Myers, if you don't mind kind of describing the difference between passing a course and passing an SOL test at the high school level, because, so, loaded question here. Does this mean you're passing 26 SOL tests and 22 SOL
No,
tests? Can you talk through the difference there?
That's a great question. So we have things called verified credits, and you have to have 5 verified credits, both for an advanced studies diploma and a standard diploma. So if you were to go back through, remember that English had 2 and math has 1, science and social studies. So you have to pass 5 SOL tests in the course between 9th grade and 12th grade. Not, when I talk about 22 credits and 26, other than 5 of them, they don't have SOL tests. You are passing the class, and if you pass the class, you get the credit. When students take their SOLs, 5 SOLs in the course of their between 9th grade and 12th grade, if they were to fail an SOL test, they can retake it. And so they can do that twice, and then we can work with them on something that we talk about, their alternatives that we can work with students on. So at the high school level, this SOL testing is not a barrier for our kids to graduate, I guess is the summary I'd like to provide. That is not the barrier to graduating. But again, it's 5 verified credits, regardless if you're on standard or advanced studies diploma. Does that clarify?
Thank you, Dr. Myers. And then also, Madam Chair, if I might add, there is a diploma missing on here. It's the Applied Studies Diploma, and that is for students with disabilities. So for students that have significant disabilities, they would qualify for what's called an Applied Studies Diploma. They would walk when they're 18 or 19, and they can come back until they're 21 inclusive, so that they can work towards transition skills, getting ready for the next stage of their careers. So we do have students that do go until they're 21 inclusive. So that is just one that's not on here. Just want to make sure you're aware of that. But students with disabilities can access these diplomas as well. Just want to make sure that's mentioned there.
Thank you. Any other questions for me? All right, thank you so much.
Now are we done?
Little does he know.
That's your cue.
Little does he know. So I'm going to hand out just in pure teacher fashion.
Bye, Batman. Bye, Batman.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. So thank you to the board, Dr. Hummer. We are going to talk about the Perkins Plan, which we go over on an annual basis. It is a lot of information. I printed it out because sometimes it's easier to digest if something's in front of you as we go through all of the action items, because like I said, it's going to be a lot of information. But the main point that I always like to point out, and I do this whenever I try with CTE, is just to understand kind of the depth of our program here at Frederick County Public Schools, as well as just the intention behind what we do, and that there is kind of a method to our madness, and why we, align certain program areas, why we look to different types of program areas, why we work with Laurel Ridge to get all of our programs in Shenandoah, and all these amazing things that we have for our students. So the Perkins 5, it provides federal funds to increase focus on academic achievement of career and technical education students. It strengthens the connection between secondary and post-secondary education. It improves state and local accountability. It removes barriers for special populations, and it promotes work-based learning opportunities for all students. So how I have it kind of broken down in front of you is, if you notice on this first page, you'll kind of see how it is color-coded. So within the Perkins Plan, we're really talking about 4 major areas. So you'll see in the actual printout, you have kind of a blue, a yellow, a pink, and a green tab. So the blue tab talks about certification and insurances, and we're going to go through all of these, so you're in for a treat. The yellow tab talks about performance assessment. The pink tab, we're going to talk about the CTE management system schedules. And then finally, on that green tab is when we're going to talk about budget. So for that first tab, so we're looking at the blue tab. So that's the certification and insurances. So if you kind of flip over, and this one is just one page, these first couple of pages go into, in detail, what the Perkins Plan is all about. So it consists of, within the certification and insurances, some of the highlights that I'm going to point out. We are required to provide a minimum of 11 courses and 3 program areas at the secondary level that reflect the labor needs and student interest. Here at Frederick County Public Schools, we teach over 90 courses across 8 program areas that include all of those 16 different career clusters for middle and high school. So again, it just proves kind of our breadth, our depth of what we have within our CTE program. So if you kind of go down, it says number 1. So some of the key points that I'm going to point out. Number 1C, what you'll see is provide middle school CTE exploration. We have worked very hard this year. We have integrated a CTE pathways coach, Miss Abby French, at the middle school level to connect that bridge, because as we all know, at middle school, sometimes they don't see that next step after middle school. We also have 4 program areas. We offer the Worlds of Work to our 8th graders. We have 2 high school courses available in the program of studies for 8th graders for credit. And we work through our industry tour program, where we take those 8th graders and 7th graders to the various local industries in our area so that they can have a true understanding of what we have here in Winchester. And then this summer, we've talked about before, but we are having a CTE Academies for rising 8th and 9th graders that's going to be housed at Dow J. Howard. That's completely free. Transportation is free. We provide breakfast and lunch. And that, again, is trying to kind of bridge that gap between middle and high school so that they understand the opportunities that we have here in Frederick County. We have under 1F that we award verified units of credit for passing industry credentials. We have under number 4, the applicant will submit, and that's us, descriptive and statistical reports containing complete, accurate, and reliable data that measures the progress of students, including special populations as required. And again, this just goes to prove that when we're looking at data, when we're outreaching to our community, when we're looking at our completers and having that historical data, that we are making sure we're using it moving forward to make the program the best that it could be. And then number 16, the plan is developed in consultation with local CTE advisory, composed of critical stakeholders. So that's that first certification and insurances. So if you go to our yellow, and that is where we're going to talk about just our performance data. So our performance assessment, that's really the heart of our accountability in review of our performance for completers. So completers are students who have taken a coherent sequence of courses and met all requirements for graduation. The performance assessment reports performance of these students with CTE completers, including special populations exceeding performance targets. And historically, an average of 50% of completers annually have earned an advanced study diploma. So that just kind of, again, we like to say it all the time, but CTE is for all students, and it really allows us to take that student achievement to the next level. Local programs are evaluated annually using performance standards and measures approved by the VDOE in compliance with Perkins. Frederick County has consistently met performance measures negotiated with federal government. So that final page, it has kind of what our goals are, but before that, we have what we have done within Frederick County. So what you'll see is that we have, with the exception for academic proficiency in science, within our special populations, we have met or exceeded that agreed upon target. So you might say, well, then what happens when we don't meet that target? That's where we go, and I'll work with Ms. Levine, who's the supervisor of science, and that's where we'll start to dive into, okay, how can we make some of the science components and CTE and marry them so that it gives that relevance to students? Because a lot of times, a student might not love science, but they might love a career in engineering, and they have to understand how science gets them to that career. So when you make it a little bit more personalized, which is what we try and do within CTE, that can try and help fill some of those gaps. So it is, we understand we have a small deficit that we are working very hard to, in the future, to bring those numbers up. There was also recently, I think it was either last year or the year before, a new science SOL. So that sometimes always, whenever you have a new test, kind of has some dips as we start to get used to that. So that is where our performances are. And like I said, this is just shows you where some of the agreed upon targets are and where we are as a county, just how much progress we continue to make within our CTE program. Are there any questions so far? Because I know I'm throwing a lot at you. And I'll answer all questions that you have at the end. All right, so if we move on, so that was our performance assessment. So the bulk of what the Perkins plan, if you go under your pink tab, this is what we call our CTE management system schedules. And this basically has what we are doing as a county to determine where we're asking for funding, to determine where the most appropriate way to spend our money is, and that's where all of these schedules are. So we're gonna go through all of the schedules. There's a lot of information in here. What I'm gonna go over is just a very brief overview of all the schedules. All of this and kind of like a cheat sheet of sorts will be available to you so that you can go through and kind of go back as you have questions. So schedule number 1 and 2 are pretty similar, and what they talk about is stakeholder participation. Mr. Atkins, I know a lot of times you ask like, what can we do as a community? Where are we having holes? You can see with some of our representatives is that our community, we are nothing without our community partners, and they always step up to the game. They are part of our CTE advisory committee. So we have, the important part of this is that it's a little bit of everybody. So we're talking about parents, students, teachers, labor organizations, workforce, business and industry, Laurel Ridge, Shenandoah, special populations, community representatives. So all of these stakeholders are imperative in our success because they allow us that step, as we talk from middle to high school, what about high school onto the workforce? What are we seeing out there that our students are not prepared for? They allow that voice within CTE for us. So that's schedules 1 and 2. And again, that's mostly just talking about stakeholder participation. Schedule number 3, we work with Laurel Ridge to determine some different career pathways that are in need in our area and what we have coming down the pipeline within CTE so that we can ensure that the education that they're receiving within Frederick County, if they want to continue that, whether Laurel Ridge, any other community college, any other college in general, that it makes sense. So the one example that we have for you, and it should be in your packets, is what we call our plan of study. And that allows you as a parent, that allows you as a community member, as a board member to see if I have a student starting in 7th grade, what is their plan of study? What is their path gonna look like all the way up to graduation and after? Because it's not that we just want our kids to be successful and graduate, we want them to be successful members of our community. So we're not gonna stop right when they graduate and say, okay, good luck, see you later. We're gonna continue and work and ensure that Laurel Ridge has the appropriate courses available for them to take to continue on with that pathway. All right, schedule number 4 is for our, is for our special populations report. And that's actually, and I'll have Dr. Angela, if you can go one step further on this slideshow, and then I'll have you probably go back and, oh, no, I have it, never mind. Never mind, sorry, Dr. Angelo, got ahead of myself. So for our special populations report, this just, I have it up on the screen, but it also just shows you kind of our unduplicated CTE enrollment within our special populations. We have broken it down to students who are economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, homeless, English learners, the number of students in foster care, those students with parents in active duty, single-parent students, and then non-traditional. So on the previous slide, a great example is the young lady there, Corinne. She's a Millbrook student in Orange, and she has an internship at Fabritech. So Fabritech is welding, manufacturing. Usually it is not predominantly, you don't see a lot of women in that industry, but that is what she is doing, and that's what she is pursuing. So that's kind of an example of when we talk about those non-traditional students. So that gives you a breakdown of our special populations. And then when you go on into our schedule number 5, this just talks about all the different areas in which we integrate academics within all of our program areas. So it kind of goes all of these different activities. So you might have something as far as like developing and implementing an academic and career and technical collaborative plan. You might have doing team teaching, things like that. It's basically how we continue to strive for collaboration, how we continue in each and every single one of our program areas to ensure that we're providing a high level of education, whether that's through dual enrollment, whether that's through student organizations, industry tours, but we're also ensuring that all of our program areas are aligned in some way. We're having that conversation with some of the core teachers. How do they align with SOLs? How can we, have core classes and CTE combined so that we are really impacting all of our students? All right, schedule number 6. So this is the one thing I do know a lot about, so you can ask questions here. But the work-based learning, this is where we just embed and try and embed every single opportunity for students for work-based learning in all our program areas. So that comes in a variety of different ways, and that's why you see a lot of the different X's. So something like a clinical experience, you're going to have that in health and medical sciences. You're not going to have that in marketing. But almost every single other of those work-based learning opportunities, they are within every single course that we offer within Frederick County, within our CTE program area. And it's a lot. And like I said, I know I've presented about work-based learning. It goes all the way from a guest speaker all the way up to an internship. So it really kind of, kids can come on and off that path, where they see fit. All right, schedule number 7. This just talks about how we train and continue to use technology within our courses and ensure that our teachers are up to date on kind of the latest trends that are happening in technology. We try and incorporate and make sure that we use budget for the state-of-the-art equipment so that no teacher is going without, so that they have those laser printers, that 3D printer, so that they're really able to showcase what students are going to find out there in the real world. Let's see, schedule number 8, this goes to our recruitment as far as teachers and retaining staff. One of the things I will say about CTE teachers is that a lot of the things you have to go annually to some of these professional development conferences because technology is changing so rapidly. So we ensure that we allow our teachers that opportunity. We do every summer, we have with American Woodmark our Teachers in Industry, where teachers, it can be CTE, non-CTE. And I did it last summer, it was amazing. Spend a week with American Woodmark and you learn how cabinets are made from the very beginning to the very end, and you learn about culture and leadership, and it's just a great opportunity as well. Schedule number, what are we on here? 9, there you go. And then also we just have schedule number 9, so we have, so schedule number 9 is just our use of performance measures within our CTE leadership, our advisory. So again, we're looking at data, we're putting surveys out there, we're making phone calls to these kids after they graduate, we're meeting with principals because education changes every year. So we want to make sure that we're finding the needs that are at every single school and that we're meeting those needs. That's how the CTE Summer Academy program came about, from some of our middle school principals that had those needs. Schedule number 10. So this schedule number 10 just talks about the improvement, expansion, and modernization of CTE programs by providing curriculum updates, instructional materials, software, equipment, expanding CTE programs to offer students more choice, and initiating programs based on the labor market needs. So these are all just opportunities where we are allowing our teachers that collaborative forefront and nature to be able to really talk about what their content is, how they need to change it. It changes every single year, how they deliver it. So we try and provide them those opportunities. We get a lot of times equipment breaks. We also get a lot of times things are coming in the forefront we don't know about. And so how can we provide those equipment needs to our teachers? So that's where we go through schedule. Now I'm totally losing it here. Schedule 10. So, all right. Schedule number 11. So Schedule 11, this is where we use data for planning for our local needs assessment. This is, again, a lot of it comes down to reviewing our annual state performances and looking at our enrollment numbers, looking at our credential results. We're looking to see how many credentials we're giving out a year, where are students passing. If we're having a not successful year or if we have lower numbers, how can we go back and determine what the needs are for whether it's remediation, whether it's thinking about, like, is this the credential that is right and that is needed at this time. Schedule number 12. This is where we talk about just using our Major Clarity, which is our platform that we use for career planning that allows for students to get a little bit better understanding in an easy to manage platform in terms of if they're interested in looking and becoming a vet, what classes we have in Frederick County, how they can continue on with their academic career within Frederick County and then beyond. We also use our career coaches at each high school that allow for an opportunity for that one-on-one consultation when students are interested in a career and what opportunities we have within Frederick County Public Schools. All right, schedule number 13. So Schedule 13 discusses how we overcome barriers and provide equity within our programs, including accommodations, modifications, course offerings, and tours specifically for students with disabilities, our L populations, and non-traditional students. So one example of this might be probably about 2 months ago, we offered a tour with some of our students, our L students as well as our students with disabilities, and we took them to Dow J, and then we also took them to their feeder school so that they could kind of make that connection of, what their career interests were, how they could go from their middle school journey on to high school so that they felt comfortable, so that they were happy to walk into one of those CTE classes. So that is what we have for Schedule 13. All right, Schedule 14 is our comprehensive local needs assessment, and this is what we complete every 2 years, but we really look at it every year. And what we're looking at is we're looking at labor market data because we want to make sure that if we're going to have a culinary program, that the need is in Frederick County for us to invest time, money, energy in that culinary program. So what we found with just our industry in demand sectors is we had food preparation, construction, education, and healthcare were at the top of the list. Valley Health, we work very closely with as far as having our co-op students be there. We just did a day at Valley Health for a job shadow for students that were interested in nutrition and environmental services. So it's not just the nursing that you would think about, but they also have opportunities for a whole variety of different occupations because Valley Health obviously is a huge community partner in our area. And then Schedule 15, we do not have any regional technical centers where participating school districts participate, so we don't have to worry about that one. And then Schedule 16 talks about the financial data, and this is what is provided for administrators, principals, assistant principals. We have some teachers that are on extended contracts, so we have some teachers that are working 11-month, 12-month. We also have just operational cost, instructional materials. So that goes where some of that funding categories are, but the bulk of where our funding actually will come from that green tab, which is Schedule 17 and 18. So this goes pretty in depth. And again, I'm not going to go over every single piece of what the budget is, but this is how we would expend our funds and assist our division with continuously improving academic and technical skills for the students within CTE. The budget requires that 60% of the funds be utilized for required items and 40% on permissive items. No more than 5% can be used for administrative costs of operating CTE programs. And Schedule 17 is developed based on teacher budget requests and strategies generated from the needs assessment. So that's where, again, we look at what do we need and what equipment do we need, what instruction do we need, what do we need to make our students successful, what do we need to make our staff successful. And then Schedule 18, it shows the object codes and categories about how funds will be allocated. The 2024-2025 allocation has not been formally announced by the VDOE, therefore we use last year's allocation, which is $214,521.52 to build the budget, and it's computed based on estimates provided by the U.S. Census Bureau of the number of individuals aged 5 through 17 inclusive who reside in the school district, served by the local education agency, and are from families below the poverty level for the preceding fiscal year, compared to the total numbers of such individuals who reside in the school district served by all educational agencies in the state for the preceding fiscal year. So that was a lot. So, and that's why I printed it out so that you can go through it.
Yeah.
And this, like I said, this is linked in the presentation. You will be provided with kind of just what I just went over in a condensed form, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I just have one quick question. Don't even need to go back to the slide for it. Schedule 9. You talked about checking in with graduates as they enter the workforce. How long does that go on? Like, are you checking in with them at like maybe a 5-year mark, maybe a 10-year mark if it's even possible to get a hold of them at that point? But
Mostly what we're doing is we're checking in with them after they graduate, and it's usually that year after they graduate. So we usually start, honestly, probably in about a month or so, where we contact them and to see, are you working, it's a whole kind of list of questions. Did it help with your CTE courses? Are you doing what you went, through your CTE courses? But I know that we do, the one good thing I would say a lot of our programs is that the teachers within our programs have built really great relationships. So we're able to see a lot of the success stories and still have communication with our students. So 5-10 years down the road, it might not be as formal data points that we can pick towards, but I know that we are in constant contact with our students.
yeah, I know like a lot of times, we learn a lot in school and then we're ready to hit the ground running when we, get out to the field, and then all of a sudden now we're just an apprentice or somebody who's just kind of go get me this, the gopher on the job site or whatever, and as you're learning your job, and they get kind of frustrated with that, so that's why I would like to see data points or, just kind of hear a story from time to time of that student who has been in doing something for 5 years in the nursing program or what have you, and kind of see where they're checking in at and see if, because I understand, you're coming into a new job, you might be like, I learned so much at school, but now I'm kind of forgetting it because I'm just running paperwork back and forth or grabbing a tool for so-and-so, so I'd like to see kind of where they're at 5-10 years down the road. And if anybody's listening out there and on the internet, come in and share your story with us.
I will say, I was a former middle school teacher, and so and I haven't taught middle school since 2016. So a lot of my kids are now in the 23 and 24,
Yeah.
and the amount of kids that I will just be at the grocery store or like anywhere. We did a day with a line worker.
Okay.
And I saw one of our former students, and I was like, wait a second, and this is from middle school. The middle school
Yeah.
kids usually don't remember their teachers. We did at Shenandoah, we did a business symposium or whatever it was called, and they had one of the students that was speaking, one the guest speakers there was a Frederick County graduate.
That's awesome.
And it was the same, and it was for FBLA, and he was like, I remember taking FBLA, and he's like, for me, he took keyboarding, which nobody loves keyboarding except for me, but he was like, I remember keyboarding. So it is fun, and I do think a lot of our students are still in the community and do definitely have those great stories.
Yeah, it's funny. We run into them all the time. Like I'm on a job site right now, and I've run into a young lady who's an electrician. She's a graduate from Shenandoah. It's like that's pretty cool. You know, so I kind of asked her about her experiences here in Frederick County. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For myself, I'm really impressed, and I'm really glad that this is an opportunity for students to have an alternate plan for their future. I'm sure it can be augmented by college, but having expertise that is available for them in this program. I think it's a very good benefit for our community. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Excellent job, Ms. Post. Third year going through this, and I think that you did a very, very good job explaining it and make it simple to understand.
I did it.
I did do it.
Did
Thank you.
it.
Thank
Mommy,
you.
I did
You
it.
feel accomplished. I'm out of here. Thank you.
Mommy, I did it.
Are you looking for a motion on this one?
Yes, please, Madam Chair, yes.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee forward this request to the full board with a recommendation to approve the Perkins Plan for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Ah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
I.
Leo
wanna hit the
also
gavel?
ayes.
Yeah, I haven't hit it.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
I do it now.
Thank you, everybody, for being patient with the little ones in the room.
Mommy, how do you do it now?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Hummer, the audience members here and those watching on the internet this evening. I have the great opportunity to share with you our special education annual plan that I do every year with you. What you'll see on this screen is just a timeline to help you understand where we are in the process. So last evening, we presented the annual plan to our SEAC. That was reviewed and approved by them. We are presenting this evening to our instructional committee. It does have to be approved by our school board. We know that there's an April 16th board meeting, so hopefully this will be approved, because then we have to have it submitted with those approvals to the Department of Education by May 10th. For your information, just so you know, the allocation of funding that we receive is done in two parts. The first comes in July, and then the second comes in October. The plan is linked there, but I've given you all a copy, so I'm going to walk you through the plan. And I've already turned to page 10, because that's where it really starts for you all. Page 1 through 9 are really just the directions for me as the director, the things I have to ensure that we are considering as we build our budget for each year for the allocation of these funds. Page 10 is really important because it will require Dr. Hummer's signature, that he is approved, and he's assuring that we have gone through all of the steps. We are accepting our federal funds to the best of our knowledge in the way that will support students with disabilities in the programs we have here in Frederick County. So then if you'll turn to page 11. There's a list of assurances here. I am not going to read all of these to you, but some ones that I think are important to note that some of you have heard in the past. So you've heard the term FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education. We have an obligation to provide that to all students with disabilities who are eligible for services, ages 2 through 21 inclusively. We need to ensure that every child has an IEP, or an individualized educational program, that is designed to meet their unique needs, that will allow them to make progress in the general curriculum and to be educated with their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent possible. All of those are there. In addition to that, we also provide testing opportunities for our students. You heard Dr. Meyer talk about verified credits. She's absolutely correct. Our students with disabilities are enrolled in courses where there are verified credits for them to earn toward their diploma as well. Then if you turn to page 13, these are our submission statements. This really ensures that under this provision, there are two portions that we're going to talk about this evening, 611 and 619. Section 611 is school age, 619 is our early childhood programming, and this ensures that we have considered all of those things in the development of our budget. All right, if you turn to page 15, this is new this year. We still have to indicate whether there are barriers for our school division to accept funding, but they've added an additional layer that refers to GEPA. That stands for General Education Provisions Act. Very similar to what you may have heard in the past with Title I funding. We have to consider, are there barriers? What do we need to do to ensure that students with disabilities have equitable access to the same services as their non-disabled peers? So what we've done is we've taken information from our Title I counterparts. We've used that language to fill this in here and indicate that there are no barriers that exist. If barriers do come to our attention, if there's parents or anyone who brings those to our attention, we want to immediately remedy those and investigate and take care of those to the maximum extent possible. So that's that new portion. At this time, there are no barriers, but as barriers become available or we're made aware of those, we want to make sure that we're addressing those.
Can I ask a question? What
Sure.
barriers might we run into, and do we see anything that we can get ahead of, coming down the pipeline?
Really, it talks about the barriers in accepting this flow-through money to implementing special education programs. And so it's difficult because we don't anticipate any barriers. We've been using our money to educate our students with disabilities. We have strong, robust programs in our comprehensive schools. I think the slight difference this year is they want to make sure that there's consideration of equitable processes in place.
Okay.
And so we're doing that for all children, but especially those with disabilities.
So this is kind of where I've got to hang up, all right? Where, if we're trying to provide equitable outcome, why, and a barrier that I see that we have is we don't have space and facility. So, legal department, are we gonna run into an issue like that? Like you said, 2 to 21, and if we don't have space, is that gonna be a barrier that we were gonna run into with the state? Just trying to keep my
So
head
that is a great question, Mr. Atkins, and we are required by law to provide educational programs for our students, but we're also an additional layer is to provide services for our students with disabilities. So it is my job and responsibility to inform you all if we are running into any space issues that we have to create those spaces for our students.
Right, I know we just
So-
moved people from Jordan Springs to Dow J, to provide that additional space.
Correct.
So
We
I
would have
know-
to add we would have to add additional modulars if we came to that point. So if you're alluding to if we don't get the fourth high school, if we don't get the expansion of our elementary schools, if we do not have space for our students with disabilities, that would be another reason as to why we really need to push for these CIP projects. But if we don't get those funding, we would have to ask for additional modulars at these schools to create those spaces.
Understood.
And
Just
this
kinda-
may also apply to the question you've asked. A few months ago, you may remember that you asked a question about Child Find. And can we just no longer accept referrals for Child Find? And my
Right.
answer to you was, no, sir, we cannot.
Exactly.
So that would be considered a barrier, right? If we are extending those referrals and we don't have the resources necessary to make sure we're processing those, that could become a barrier that we have to address.
Yep, and that's the method to the madness on the question.
Well, I wasn't sure if that,
No,
I was trying to take you back
does-
to that
I think
situation
I think
before.
you're seeing what you're picking up what I'm putting down.
I absolutely do. All right. So then if there are no further questions on that, we're going to turn to page 17. This addresses our interagency agreement and our educational services for those individuals who are incarcerated at the Northwestern Regional Adult Detention Center. And we are required to support students there who are ages 18 through 21 inclusively. We have a teacher coordinator who provides those services. We have a fantastic relationship with the Adult Detention Center. They're very complimentary of Ms. Himmelwright. The educational services as well as transitional services she provides to those incarcerated youth who are leaving and looking for job force opportunities, Laurel Ridge, things of that nature. So she coordinates all of that with them. So we have to indicate that, yes, we have a jail, that we support students here in our area. And the second box is no. We do have an interagency agreement. It's not been updated. The last time it was updated was when Dr. Hummer joined us, and there's no reason to do that unless either we decide or the Adult Detention Center decides to change that. Page 18, this really is just a narrative summary. All right, so Frederick County Public Schools, you were allocated this fund in 22-23. How did you use the money that was afforded to you and that came to you through flow-through money? This narrative indicates that we used the majority of our funding for teaching positions. There was also allocation for some professional learning, as well as assistive technology, and also for supplementary aids materials and supplies for our teachers. We also want to make sure that we've indicated here that we are educating those youth who are incarcerated, and we also have a responsibility to those students who are in private school or homeschool, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the plan. All right. Any questions on that? All right, page 19. This is always the fun one for us. All right, this stands for maintenance of effort. And I'm going to do my very best to break this down to make it understandable. So you'll see on this page there are 4 different, I'm going to call them boxes or buckets. So what we have to do as a school division is we have to ensure that we are not decreasing the amount of money that we are using to support educating our youth with disabilities. So when we look at our local funding as well as local plus state, we have to ensure that that doesn't dip it down from the year before. If it does, there are some exceptions for that to occur, but we have to make sure that we meet one of those exceptions. Okay, what you see on this page are our anticipated costs for the 24-25 school year. Each January, we are required to submit a report to the Department of Education with the actual cost that we have spent per capita in local and state funding to support students with disabilities. So this page does not consider any of the federal money. This is local and state, but then we add in the federal money we're receiving to support all students. Just for a piece of information, last year, when we had to submit this, we met all 4 prong areas. So we met our obligation in all of those areas. We're required just to meet in 1. But in the last several years, we've met at least 2, or at most, the last couple years, 4. Questions about that? Okay, page 20. We're going to talk about 2 different things on this page. It's CCEIS, and it's also proportionate set aside. You may recall last year that I had the opportunity to stand before you and let you know that CCEIS, or Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services, we were required to set aside 15% of our annual money to address our disproportionality. Our disproportionality is in the area of emotional disability, and we're finding 2 or more students eligible who are 2 or more races. So what that means, if you are a child in Frederick County and you are classified as having 2 or more races, the likelihood of you being found eligible under ED is 3 times, you're 3 times more likely than your other peers. So the state looks at this data, they determine whether we're disproportionate in our eligibility practices, and if we are required to set aside money to support those students who are identified at risk, to help them so that they may not become eligible for special ed. Okay, that's important because this is the 2nd year. We've had to set aside 15%. We've already received designation that we'll have to do this again next year. You may also recall that during a finance committee, I brought forward to you a contract with Effective School Solutions that was talking about mental health supports for some of our students. That is coming out of the CCEIS funding. Okay? You'll see at the bottom, in chart form, it shows you our total amount that we have to set aside is $489,000, $770.70 to the penny. When the DOE comes in to audit us, when I say to the penny, we have to show that our books have set aside this amount and we have spent down everything to the penny on that. So it's broken down into those different object codes for that very reason, to include services we're going to provide to our students at risk, whether it's direct services or professional learning for staff. Any questions on that part? That's a lot. All right. The second part is proportionate set aside. So I've stood before you before and told you that we are obligated to set aside funding if we educate students who are either homeschooled or enrolled in a private school. We talked about our child find obligation for those individuals. We also have an obligation to educate them as well. So you'll notice in the chart form, the proportionate set aside is based on the number of students we have eligible, who's currently receiving services, and for next year, we will be setting aside $33,000 in funding for those students to receive services through what we refer to as an ISP. So you might be asking, what disabling conditions do you serve through an ISP? Well, that would be specific learning disability, other health impairment, developmental delay, or speech language impairment. And that is for our students pre-K through 21 inclusively. Any questions on either of
What was
those
that
two?
last category?
Speech language impairment. So there are 4: developmental delay, other health impairment, specific learning disability, and speech language impairment. Any questions on that? The next page is blank because we are not engaging in a joint application process. We're doing this on our own. So now we're going to get into, all right, what are we looking at for our budget for next year? We are using all of the allocated funds, the same amounts from last year. We don't know what our allocation is going to be yet, so you have to build your budget on what you know, and that's the money that was allocated to us last year. So this page 22 and 23. 22 is the narrative of how we are proposing to spend our allocated money. And then on page 23, you'll see that it's broken down into those object codes. The majority of our funding is to support teaching positions. So we have 26 teaching positions that include their salaries and benefits that will be coming out of this grant. We've looked at the proposed budget, and we've already made those adjustments based on what we believe will happen if everything is approved. We also have a lot of contracted services that we are providing. When I say contracted services, we have students who are visually impaired who may have to have their materials translated in Braille for them. So we are contracting out for those services. We also have additional staff members, school psychologists who may be virtual, and so we have to contract with a parafacilitator that helps support the testing or support for our students. So all of those, in addition to any assistive technology that we may require for students and their unique needs, are all part of this plan and this budget. Questions on that?
A question about the contract positions. So if we have a student who's visually impaired, graduates, when, say, we only have one student with that disability in our school system, they graduate, the next year, are we still funding for that position on the off chance we get somebody in, or would we contract that position once somebody moves in from Fairfax?
We would not be funding that position through, if that student is no longer here and they've graduated either with a standard diploma or they've left us for whatever reason. What we would be doing is having the ability to have contracted funding there for other services as a student who moves in, who may require that, and we don't have that available. We can use one of our contracted agencies to do that.
So for instance, if a kid came to us and they speak Swahili, we can get somebody in here for that? Would that be like an ESL type thing?
It's not a disability.
No, would
Right,
it be
so
an
that would be
ESL type?
That would be a different service. That would be
Okay.
through English Language Services, and we would provide that through our English Language Department. So this is more specifically.
Just for disabilities?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Correct.
I didn't know if that money could help out with, ESL students or,
Well, now, if that student who spoke Swahili also had a hearing impairment, then yes, we would provide them through specialized services. But if that student spoke Swahili, was not a student with a disability, we would provide them services through English Language Services.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And if we needed to provide information to their parents in Swahili, we would have to provide that to them as well, because we
Okay.
want to provide it to them in their native
right,
language.
because it would be tough for that student to get
Correct.
homework help.
Because we need the parents to understand what we are proposing in IEPs, and we need to do that in their native language so they understand what we are doing to help support their child.
100%. I didn't want to say German because we have somebody down here who can do that.
You really just wanted to see if I could pronounce Swahili. Okay, all right. So then if you look at the chart on page 23, it's broken down for you. When I talk about the staff, the personal services, employee benefits, that's their salaries and benefits. The purchase services, we're looking at contracted services, other services for travel, materials, supplies, as well as capital outlay. We want to make sure that we are including anything that may be necessary for assistive technology. So when you see all of those things listed, That may not be what we are required to spend, but the Department of Education is very particular, and we need to be very specific. If you're going to use this for any AT device, you need to give us a heads up of what that looks like. So that's why we try to really capture the things that we currently use, anticipate based on trends of students, what their needs are for AT, and include that. Any questions on that? All right, we're in the home stretch. So the next part of our plan is 619. You'll notice that page 24 is blank because we, again, are not doing a joint application. And this refers to our early childhood special education grant. And so you'll notice it follows the same format, narrative, and then a chart form. What's unique about this is because we have listed 13 special education teaching, 12 early childhood special education teachers and 13 IAs, but that's partial payment for those. So when you look at the amount of money we have for early childhood, there's no way we could support the number of positions. So what we do is we work with our finance team to look at the allocation of the salaries and benefits, and we take a portion of this grant to supplement or to support them in that with their salaries, okay? And so then when you look at page 26, you'll see how that's broken down. The reason I said that, you'll look at the total at the bottom, 56,000, would not support one full position. So that's why we're looking at those partial positions, and the allocation of funds from this budget goes specifically to that. And that concludes the draft plan for 24-25.
I apologize. Can we go back a couple pages?
We absolutely can.
Page number 11.
Sure.
Can you enlighten me on the 6th bullet point, please?
Page 11.
Yeah, so it's in reference to a surrogate parent.
Oh, yes.
So whenever we have a student that does not have a direct guardian, which there are multiple examples of that, we have to assign a guardian, which is called a surrogate guardian, so that they can sign off on that IEP. So we have a process for that, so that that parent can then serve as the guardian for that parent. So we have students, unfortunately, where their biological parents passed away, they don't have an aunt, they don't have an uncle, they don't have a brother.
It's not, this child has a couple parents, we're gonna put somebody else in.
No,
I don't-
there has to be a process. Parental rights have been terminated for whatever reason. We can't locate the parents. And as Dr. Hummer said, we have a pretty extensive process. So we select individuals. Those individuals cannot be employed by, like, the Department of Social Services, cannot be employed by the school division. And we have to provide specific training because, again, their job is to be informed, to be a meaningful participant in the IEP process, and to provide consent to the program and services that are outlined in the IEP for our students.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Other questions?
I would have asked you that, but you were clipping along and I
Nope.
didn't catch my eye until after. you
Sorry, I
passed.
didn't get back to page 11 fast enough for that. Other questions? And this is an action item, so I would ask that if you can take action and take that to the full board. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we move to the full board, the special education plan for 2024, 2025 for approval.
Second it.
We have a motion. It's been properly seconded. Any discussion?
So,
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. All right, I think that we have one last action item up. Again, thank you for all of our presenters. I know it's not an easy job to go through that and prepare all of that to state and federal standards. So if I don't have any abstainment.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion has been properly seconded.
Wait,
All those in
Daddy.
favor
I
signify
just
by
want
saying
you-
aye.
Aye.
Bang
Okay,
that
go
gavel,
on, bang
son.
it.
Mama.
Bang it.